What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. Today's fanfic is titled, What if Naruto joined Sakura and Ino's baby mission, and built the funniest harem ever? Part 1. Let's start this fanfic. The restaurant was crowded and waiters were rushed off their feet trying to sever the establishment before the hungry mass turned into ravenous unhappy patrons that attacked at the first sign of cold chips. It was for that reason that Sakura was thankful that she was considered somewhat of a big hero. A savior and a legendary ninja. It meant that while all the other customer had to frantically wave their pepper shakers in order to get a waiter's attention, she just had to look mildly displeased and had a red-vested lackey at her side in moments. Have I told you that I'm really glad I invited you to dinner? Ino said as their food arrived, not only warm but actually hot. With steam and everything. You still haven't told me why we're here, Sakura said, unfolding her napkin and smiling at the wonderful steak that was the size of her forearm. And it does feel nice to be appreciated. Her smile turned mischievous. If we get bored later, I can always get us free dessert if I pretend to be annoyed. Ino laughed, then said mock seriously, will you make them cry? Like a baby, Sakura puffed up with false pride before deflating in a chorus of laughter. This was nice. She had been so busy running the hospital that she forgot that there was life outside of her medical books. Her and Ino were friends, but they weren't really that close. Even after Sai had died fighting Orochimaru and Naruto had given his life in the ultimate sacrifice to save the village, she hadn't grown closer to the blonde. Ino seemed to go quiet at the word, baby. She fiddled with her fork and Sakura frowned as she noticed the change in mood. The air had gotten heavier, but she assumed it was due to her own remembrance of her dear friends. She tended to do that sometimes. She just got caught up in a memory, or she would be jolted by a widely grinning blonde-haired kid and lose herself in the past. It tended to make everyone else around her uncomfortable to the point they tried to quickly slink off. She was about to apologize, but Ino spoke first. Talking of babies, Ino said seemingly out of the blue to Sakura, I've decided to have one. Oh, Sakura nodded, not sure what to say. I didn't know you were dating someone. I'm not, Ino said plainly. She seemed to be staring a bit too intently at Sakura. It made her nervous. I don't know if anyone explained the birds and the bees to you, Ino, but it does tend to take two. Sakura tried to joke, but Ino rolled her eyes and didn't seem to be in the mood for her humor. Yes, Sakura, I know that. The acid tone of Ino's voice made Sakura feel very small. I'm 35 and I'm not getting any younger. I want kids before it's too late. Sakura nodded, still slightly uncomfortable and unsure as to what this had to do with her. Okay, that's reasonable enough, I suppose, though I don't think 35 is over the hill. She didn't feel that old. But then she wasn't the one whose biological clock was screaming at her. Have you thought of donors? She assumed that was how Ino wanted to go about conception. Yes, that's where you come in, Ino said for the first time, looking nervous. A blush crawled up her cheeks and she coughed, breaking eye contact for a moment. Oh, was that all? Sakura smiled brightly and reached over to touch Ino's hand. She finally understood what the blonde wanted from her. Ino, you don't have to look so nervous. I would be honored to be your doctor. She smiled because they were after all friends and she was a damn good doctor. It was just like Ino to want the best for herself and her as of yet unconceived child. Ino, instead of looking pleased like Sakura assumed she would, glared at her. She looked extremely vexed and was staring at the woman across from her like she was deliberately being dense. Sakura, having been used to fame and respect due to her status of hero and job as the medical chief for the hospital, was not used to being treated in such a way. Her grin twitched inanely, having no idea what she had done wrong. No, Sakura, I don't want you to be the doctor. Well, Ino seemed to consider it for a moment before shrugging. Her skills didn't seem to be much a factor, it seemed. She was slightly annoyed with the dismissal. I suppose you can be if you want, but the reason I asked you out tonight is because I thought a lot about it. I did, really. There was a pro and con list and even a debate with Shikamaru, so it's important that you know this decision wasn't made lightly. Sakura nodded but was afraid her smile was giving away the fact that she had no idea what Ino was rambling about. As Ino paused for breath and seemed to be paying her no attention, she tired to retract the hand she had used earlier to hold Ino's. Ino, feeling the movement, trapped the escaping limb in a vice-like grip. Sakura felt intimidated in spite of herself. The intimidated feeling didn't diminish as Ino pinned her with her sharp gaze. I want to have a baby and I want you to be the donor. Sakura thought she reacted reasonably well under the circumstances. Are you crazy? The entire restaurant crashed to a halt. Waiters paused mid-step. Waitresses stopped taking drink orders. Irate customers stopped yelling at slow staff. A sea of faces turned to the now standing Sakura, who was still looking at Ino like she had transformed into an onba and declared the start of mating season. Will you sit down? Ino hissed, looking around. You're causing a scene. Sakura noticed for the first time the curious audience and sat down quickly, her cheeks blazing. Are you crazy? She hissed again, aware of the still watching spectators. No, Ino said, but she was blushing at Sakura's reaction. It wasn't that far-fetched, surely. Okay, she supposed it was. You happen to possess some great genes that I think will be good to have in a child. Sakura still looked at the blonde like she was a crazy person with the plague. Ino, we haven't even been on a date. Her eyes widened in horror. Oh crap. Is this what this is? No. And don't seem so appalled. You could do a lot worse than me. Forehead. Ino snipped, her ego bruised at the sick face Sakura pulled at the thought of dating her. Ino, a baby is a lot of responsibility. I don't love you. I'm a girl. This is a really bad idea. Sakura stuttered, unconsciously leaning back in her chair, trying to get as far away from Ino as possible. I know it's a lot of responsibility. I'm not asking you to be the father, I just want your genes. And please, Sakura, you cannot possibly be naive enough to think that you need love to conceive a baby. The whole girl thing doesn't really apply when you're a talented medical ninja. A miracle, some might say. Ino addressed each of Sakura's points in a reasonably tone. She threw in the flattery because Sakura seemed like she was ready to bolt. Ah, tut. Sakura blew air out through her mouth, flabbergasted. She hoped by exhaling loudly she would come up with plausible reasons that would make Ino see how this was a really bad idea. No such argument came and she stared at Ino dumbly. She jumped on the stray thought that crossed her mind gratefully for something to say. You want my genes? Well, not the physical ones. I'm hoping the baby will take more after me in that respect. Ino saw Sakura's eyes narrowing at the insult. She seemed to regain a measure of sanity now that they moved back onto familiar slurs. But I hope the child has your mind. You were always the smart one. And your honesty and kindness is unmatched. It would also be good if the kid wasn't as shallow as I am, though if it turns out to look like me, there's little hope for that. Beauty is a curse. Ino sighed heavily and Sakura's eyebrow twitched in annoyance. You know you can get all that from Shikamaru, Sakura said plainly. She thought she had finally recovered from the shock. Please, Ino tutted dismissively, like I would take the chance of the kid inheriting his laziness. You at least are a hard, dedicated worker. Besides, we've already discussed that possibility and came to the conclusion that Tamari would give us a slow and painful death if we did anything other than talk about the possibility. Sakura was stumped as to what to say next. Ino was gazing at her expectantly and she realized that she hadn't in fact given her an answer yet. No, she blurted out. Ino looked like Sakura had physically struck her. She blinked and looked away for a second. Guilt struck Sakura down like an avenging thunderbolt. She immediately regretted her harsh tone. Will you think about it at least? Ino tried. She looked crushed, but Sakura wouldn't string her along. Ino, I won't agree to this. I'm sorry. She got up quickly and left the table. Delivery for the brooding, had her sense of humor surgically removed, chief of the hospital. Sakura looked up from her desk to see 1010 in the doorway. In her arms she held a dusty tome that blocked the upper part of her torso from view. She grinned at her friend as she slammed the thick book down on her desk and jumped up beside it. What you looking at, oh sour one? She said as she peered at the green dog-eared jotter that Sakura was currently reading. It's Naruto's old training manual. When he was making up his own moves, he would write them in this, Sakura said, closing the book with a fond smile on her face. Ten nodded understandingly. She then rolled her head to the side to look at the big book she had lugged all the way from the bookshop she now owned. So does his book have anything to do with the heavy and very smelly tomb I had to drag here all by my skinny self? Sakura's finger wiped away the dust from the book and then spun it so the title, The Research and Side Effects of Human Transformation Jutsus, A History, was the right way up. She debated telling Ten, the person she was closest to now, the truth. I told you about Ino's crazy idea, right? Sakura said, trying to make it sound like it wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, and I made fun of you for the next week. What does this have to do with that? Ten said. I was just wondering. Professional curiosity, really. Sakura quickly defined, not wanting Ten to get the wrong idea, if same fertilization was possible. Oh, Ten asked, slightly bored of the topic, and what did you find? That two women cannot have a baby. It's scientifically impossible, Sakura said, leaving out the fact that her overachieving mind was working on theories and scenarios that would get around that pesky law of nature. Then you're off the hook with Ino, Ten said, grinning, bouncing off the desk. She was ready to forget the matter when she caught sight of Sakura's face. Sakura wasn't looking at her and had a decidedly hand in the cookie jar expression that she was miserably trying to hide. Oh no. Sakura, what are you thinking? It's Ino, your frenemy. You are not think of raising a child with that woman. No, of course not, Sakura said, waving Ten's fear away with a light wave. I was just going to get her pregnant. Ten's face dropped. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Sakura, are you nuts? It's a kid you'll be responsible for. You'll have to raise it and love it, and lots of responsibility and time. You don't even go out on the dates I set you up with. You barely leave your office. You have a camp bed in the corner. Ten yelled hysterically, waving to the well-used camp bed and folded blanket. Where would you get time for a baby? I would only be the donor. Sakura said, sounding quite reasonable in the face of Ten's fervor, and it's not like I'll be raising the baby. It'll be Ino's, not mine. I'm only the facilitator. Why on earth would you want to do this? Ten said, amazed and disturbed, but above all confused. Sakura, when she had first told her about the proposal, had seemed dead set against it. Sakura shifted in her chair and mumbled something. What was that? Ten asked darkly. Sakura coughed to clear her throat. It hasn't been done before. It's an amazing opportunity for science. Just think of the possibilities. Ten could not see the benefit to mankind if womankind suddenly managed to knock themselves up. And more than that, Sakura, you're talking as if you'll be part of an experiment. We're talking about making a baby, a little person, not a lab rat. I know that, Sakura said airily, making Ten think she didn't in fact know that. Fine, go ahead, it's not as if you'll find a way. You said it yourself that you've found that two women can't have children. Ten pouted and flopped down in her chair. After all, it was Sakura's life and she wasn't her mother. If nothing else, she'll get some good teasing out of it. And boy, did she plan to milk it when it all went sour. Idiot Sakura, playing God, Ten snorted, crossing her arms. Sakura, sensing her friend no longer opposed the idea, though she didn't seem to condone it either, smiled widely. She then made the shuffling noises and coughing noises to let Ten know she could go now. Ten got the message but sat still and glared at the pink-haired girl. Sakura was resigned to working with Ten glaring at her and pulled the green jotter back towards her to lie it beside the giant tomb. Ten's eyes automatically tracked the movement after years of training. It wasn't until Sakura moved the beat-up green book to the older book's side that she realized with a stunning clarity Sakura's plan. That's Naruto's old book, Ten realized, and Sakura looked at her bemused. She had after all told her that a few minutes ago, the old book he put all his original jutsu into. Original ones like his jutsu. You're going to use his jutsu to impregnate Ino. Sakura looked slightly startled that Ten had caught on but nodded. Yeah, but the thing about that is I'm not sure if the transformation is on an internal scale or if the jutsu is purely cosmetic. Body transformation jutsu is notoriously difficult. That's why very few ninjas use it. Orochimaru did, but he wasn't exactly a picture of health. Tenten was still stuck on the idea of a gender-switched Sakura. You're going to turn yourself into a guy and have with Ino. Her disbelief was palpable. Yes, that is one way. Though we will probably have to have the old-fashioned way. Sakura's lips quirked at that, finding it funny. It's only a 7 chance of IVF taking to Ino due to her age as opposed to the 20 of vaginal intercourse. Tenten listened as Sakura explained all this calmly in an offhanded manner. 27. You've researched this, you've actually, seriously thought about this. Well, yeah, Sakura shrugged, it's an interesting conundrum. It was that phrase that smacked Tenten on the head like a devious child. Her smile was small and somewhat nasty as she finally put her finger on what had been bugging her. The whole way through the explanation, Sakura had been talking clinically. She had been addressing issues and facts and developing logical conclusions. In short, she was thinking like a scientist. Like a doctor. Her friend didn't have a clue in her pretty little head about the human involvement in this venture. There's nothing I can do to talk you out of this? She asked just to make sure. Sakura thought about it, then nodded. She had actually talked herself into it. She had been on the fence about the idea, but laying out the facts so clearly for Tenten showed her that this was a good idea. Ino would get a baby and she would solve a medical wondering. It was mutually beneficial. No, I've decided. Okay, then, Tenten said lightly, completely changing her tone from before. She could practically see the naivety in Sakura's gaze. The doctor had no idea what she was getting into. She soon would, and Tenten would be there to support her and laugh her off. She figured that the worst that could happen was Sakura turning herself into a man and having some bad straight with Ino. Her friend would then be smart enough to realize what was actually involved with her proposal and come to her senses. It also wouldn't do the other woman any harm in interacting with someone on a more than work-related basis. Her friend had become a tad antisocial. Well, good luck then. You're going to need it. Sakura smiled, glad to have her friend supporting her. Tenten grinned a tad patronizingly back. Poor Sakura, for someone so smart she sure was dumb. Sakura approached Ino cautiously the next day. She had taken the afternoon off. A rare occurrence that prompted her secretary to nearly cry and declare a national holiday. Sakura frowned as the sound of cheering followed her out the door. Really, the standing ovation that she got was a bit overdramatic. She didn't work that much. Ino was currently hacking away at a rose bush in the garden at the back of her flower shop. The rose bush must have been extremely offensive, as Sakura had once seen Ino take down a group of enemy ninjas with the same angry movements. Those roses won't step out of line now, she tried to joke. Ino stopped mid-swing, the machete frozen in mid-air. She straightened up and wiped the sweat off her brow before turning. Ino wore tan 3/4 lengths and a sleeveless tan shirt that was tied to expose her midriff. She had on tough boots and green gardening gloves. She looked like she had just come back from safari. The best way to tend to roses is to picture your worst enemy and go for it. They grow back stronger the more they're abused. Oh, Sakura said, absorbing the knowledge before she grinned tentatively. So how many of those roses have my face? All of them, Ino said tonelessly, shouldering the machete. Sakura nodded, looking away. I've come to apologize. My reaction at the restaurant was unacceptable. I acted like a jerk. Ino deflated, then threw down the machete and took off her gloves. Yeah, well, I did spring it on you all of a sudden. I should have handled it better myself. I'm sorry too. Sakura smiled, pleased that Ino was being reasonable. It made things easier. Well, I did think about your offer, and if you still want to, then I would love to get you pregnant. Really? Ino cried, her entire face lighting up like a bonfire. Oh Sakura, that's so great. You won't regret this. Sakura laughed as Ino threw herself into her arms and squeezed her hard. So how will we do this? Ino asked. Sakura had waited while Ino showered and changed before taking her out for coffee. The excellent service that Sakura had come to expect meant that they didn't have to wait in the incredibly long line and that they got a table near the window. Sakura blew softly on her plain black coffee. Years as an intern had shown her the benefits of the black sludge and the need to have it fast and strong. I'm working on it. So far I plan to use Naruto's jutsu to change myself into a man, then another jutsu to internally change my organs. Would you be comfortable with having with me? She had forgotten to take Ino's acceptance into account, and the fact had only just occurred to her that Ino might not want to sleep with her. Ino frowned at the proposal. Can't we use IVF? She asked, biting her lip. Sakura nodded quickly. Of course, but the conception rate is much lower. But if it make you more comfortable, then we can definitely do that. She smiled to try and put Ino at ease. How much of a difference in conception? Ino asked. Significant. IVF only yields a 7 chance of success, Sakura said, grimacing. It sounded like she was forcing Ino into the other option. 7 is still a chance. There's only a 13 increase if we do it the other way. Ino seemed to think it over, which Sakura was glad of. It showed she was taking this seriously. It also meant that there would be fewer regrets later. No, let's do it the first way. Ino nodded firmly, more to herself than Sakura. Are you sure you're comfortable with that? Sakura said earnestly. She didn't want to force Ino. God, Sakura, stop being such a girl, Ino said, rolling her eyes and leaning back in her chair. I paid for dinner the last time, so you have to put out anyway. Sakura laughed unsurely at the comment. The silence descended and they both looked at each other helplessly. They were going to do this. No, really, this was actually happening. Sakura fought down the raising panic. It was in the name of science. She could do this. She could. Sakura adjusted her small silver-rimmed glasses and moved the ruler down the dusty page. She started using the ruler after she had sneezed and lost her place once too often. Here, I brought you coffee. Ino sat the mug down on the kitchen table where Sakura had made herself comfortable. I saw your secretary today. She looks like she's stealing Prozac. You might want to test her for drugs. Ino laughed, but she was only half joking. The woman had looked ecstatic for some reason. Sakura tutted in annoyance and glanced up at Ino, agitation plain on her face. They've all been like that since I booked time away from the office to do research. They're all so pleased that I seem to have got a life. Sakura rolled her eyes as she remembered the happy chatter of 2 nurses. I told them that it was for work. I clearly labeled the need as research of a medical nature, but they're all insisting that I'm having an affair. Ino grinned. Well, you are. What? Sakura squinted up at her. Not yet. Ino conceded with a shrug, but right now you're researching ways to have with me. Sakura blinked at how the blonde put it, then blushed as she realized that it was technically right. It's for science, was her muttered defense. She decided to avoid eye contact so as to put the conversation out of her mind. Ino just grinned, then froze as a look of deep loss cut across Sakura's face. What is it? She asked, hating to see Sakura that wounded. What? Sakura asked in a daze, sitting back from the book. Oh, it's nothing. I just didn't expect to see Tsunade-sama's studies in this. That's all. Sakura grinned mockingly, which is stupid because she's the greatest. I mean, she was a greatest medical ninja in recent times. Of course she would have published her findings. It still hit her like a punch in the face though to read her mentor's sarcastic yet serious medical notes. She disparagingly tore apart other so-called experts' theories and bluntly and uncompromisingly told them not only what they had done or said that was wrong, but that they were idiots for thinking so in the first place. The so-called expert dermatologist Dr. Jenko is sadly mistaken if he thinks that any serious medical professional will take his claims of reversing the aging process on the skin as fact. Anyone with half an ounce of talent can plainly see the well-woven glamour spell induced to give the appearance of younger skin. As it's been proven on numerous occasions, one cannot turn back time with the use of chakra or any other known substance. Sakura smiled sadly as she imagined Tsunade's indignant fury at the other doctor's false accusation. Hey, let's take a break, Ino said, gently pulling Sakura away from the tomb. She was surprised when the other woman actually agreed. She hadn't been able to get the doctor to take a break for hours. Her concern grew. She settled Sakura on the sofa of her apartment and sat her coffee down beside her. Sakura drank from it gratefully. You miss her, don't you? Ino said softly, cradling her own cup. Every day, Sakura answered honestly. I know how you feel, Ino said, her own sad smile blooming slowly on her face. Every time I clean out my fridge, I put the leftovers away for Choji, but you know. Sakura nodded. Choji also didn't make it through the final fight. They sat in silence, just enjoying the company. I still expect her to walk in and tell me to get the hell out of her chair, Sakura said after a while. It still looks weird to see Shika without Choji, Ino joined in. Remember the Chunin exam and that idiot called Choji fat? Sakura laughed and Ino quickly joined in. Or the time that Naruto got an onba stuck on his back. Ino volunteered. Sakura fell into peals of laughter remembering the furry backpack of Naruto's. Sakura turned on the lamp at her desk absently. She realized with a start that it was night and actually dark outside. She sat up and her spine and neck cracked. She sighed at the relief as stress she hadn't paid attention to flew away. She stretched again to see if she could provoke another pop. Her shoulder blades obliged. She then sank gratefully down onto her well-padded seat and took off her glasses. Oh, you're still here, the secretary said, disappointed. Sakura glared at her half-heartedly, but the woman paid no heed. I just came in to lock the office up for the night. You should go home and rest. I will. Sakura nodded, but the secretary just frowned before she flounced away, muttering and shaking her head. Sakura swore that her mother had died a few years ago, but the way some of the staff behaved, it was like she never left. She glanced at the book in annoyance, then away. She had been actively seeking out Tsunade's opinions and research and skimming over the rest half-heartedly. She was like a stalker but couldn't help but be drawn to the old woman's writings. She scratched her chin absently. Really, it was a little pathetic to just seek out her mentor's views and no one else's. Not only childish and pathetic but unconductive to her current research project. But she missed her. In the same way that she kept Naruto's old book close and laughed at his doodles, she sought out her teacher's opinions. Tsunade had taught her so much she felt like she could even teach her to do this. Reading the caustic and scathing rebuttals of the fifth made her smile and ach in a way that was painful but wistful at the same time. She missed them both so much. She huffed at herself for sounding like a lost little girl, and defiantly she skipped over the page of Tsunade's work on heart surgery. She read the next report and her excitement began to rise. Case study: Bird Country. For some time a group of all-female ninjas have run their village independently in the Bird Country. Since the actual Bird Ninja clan was decimated in the Great War, this was out of necessity rather than choice, as most of the men died in the ensuing fights. The Bird Ninjas, however, have come up with a way around this handicap. The Naibu-Kei Jutsu allows for change in. But this change is only on the UAL genitalia, meaning that the entire village possesses the ability to become hermaphrodites. What is so amazing about this jutsu is that it changes DNA on a genetic level, allowing for the creation of sons. After extensive research, I have discovered that this jutsu is not without risks. Females have a limited supply of eggs. When the jutsu takes place, these eggs are transformed into sperm, allowing only a few to actually contain genetic material, the rest being blank. Women in the menopause cannot and should not use this jutsu, as it will have no effect. It can also bring on early infertility. Sakura read on in the report, fascinated from a purely medical point of view. She came to the personal comments of the researcher and read avidly. Personal comments. This is definitely a breakthrough of a medical nature, as internal change on a genetic level has never before been successful. The second seal, which I think is responsible for the internal change, could be used to perform scans and healing without surgery. It opens the possibilities, certainly. Sakura frowned as the writing seemed familiar. Her eyes flew to the bottom of the page to the researcher's name. She hit her head hard on the desk and stayed there. Of course, such complex and somewhat taboo research would only be carried out by Tsunade. The woman didn't even write her last name. She didn't need to. Everyone in the medical field knew of her. She laughed in disbelief as she realized that her old teacher did solve her problems. The damn woman was still guiding her from beyond the grave. A golden warmth settled in her chest that she refused to acknowledge. She looked at the picture of the seal on the opposite page and stood up. She walked across the room to the bookcase and grabbed a blue hardback from its slightly dusty shelf and threw it down. Tsunade was the first to come up with a way of scanning the body internally without cutting it open. It was so basic and useful that it was a milestone in medical history. Every doctor used her seals. Yep, there it was, in her old first-year medical book, the same sign for internal. Tsunade did go on to realize her musings in the personal comments. Crafty old witch. A smile tugged at her lips. Her eyes drew together as she studied first the case study then Naruto's book. The case study would be enough to get Ino pregnant, but if she combined that with Naruto's jutsu then she would actually be a fully working man. She would have completed the first successful change. Ino would probably much rather her a man than a hermaphrodite. She chewed on the side of her cheek. Naruto's jutsu was so advanced for a kid that she was surprised that it was Naruto's. The jutsu didn't change you into the opposite gender, but it did create the illusion of one. Naruto made it when he was frustrated that he couldn't do a proper illusion jutsu. It was spontaneous and on-the-spot creativity that most shonens wouldn't be able to do. That was one thing about Naruto when it came to training and jutsus, he wasn't lazy. But the thing that was noteworthy about his jutsu, as opposed to just creating the illusion of a woman, was that Naruto's was a fixed illusion. You could only turn into what you would look like as the opposite gender. There was of course a slight glamour to create the irresistible siren-like quality, but for all intents and purposes, as a kid Naruto had made a jutsu that was able to scan DNA and portray the same features on different chromosomes. Smart little idiot, she said fondly. Now all she had to do was combine the two in a way that didn't interfere with each other. Easy. So, how's it going? Ino asked, coming to sit beside her on the park bench. Sakura was frowning and her hair was a mess from constantly pulling and running her fingers through it. She had been practically chased from her office by her secretary at lunch. She apparently needed fresh air and sunlight. Like they had any medical advantages, she sneered mentally. It's fine. I've basically figured out what to do. I just can't get rid of the second. Ino blinked amazed. Huh. Sakura went on absently. I've even tried cutting it so that the illusion only extends to my top half, but how do you only do half a jutsu? Besides, the entire thing would look strange with girly legs and there's no point in a half-done job. She marked a passage in her book. Second, Ino asked, still stuck on that little sentence. Yes. I have to one that is fully working and then the one created by the illusion. It looks extremely weird, Sakura said, then turned and noticed Ino's gaping reaction. Are you okay? Fine, fine, Ino said, blinking. I'll just leave you to it then. Don't work too hard. Ino left in a dazed manner and Sakura frowned at the strange behavior. Honestly, sometimes Ino was hard to work out. I did it. Sakura hopped up on the counter of the flower shop. Ino, who was arranging a bouquet, frowned at the pink-haired woman for sitting on the counter but then remembered what she said and smiled. You did. Yeah, we can do it tonight if you want, Sakura said, cruising on the elation of a well-deserved victory. She would have another thing to add to her impressive medical resume. Tonight, Ino said, her eyebrow raised skeptically. It wasn't that she didn't want to, it was just that Sakura looked dead on her feet. Her eyes had dark circles under them and her gaze was slightly unfocused. She saw the doctor's body waver slightly as she tried to stifle a yawn. I think you should get some sleep first, then we can do it. I suppose I would need a little shut-eye, Sakura conceded as she nearly fell off the counter. Ino caught her and pulled her upright. Their faces were very close together. Sakura tilted her head to the side and a tired smile appeared. You are kinda cute. Ino rolled her eyes and helped the woman down off the counter so that she stood on the business end of the shop. She then guided Sakura to the stairs that led to her apartment. I thought we weren't doing it tonight, Sakura said, frowning. We're not, but the state you're in, I don't trust you to make it home alone. You're going to crash on the couch, Ino said, pushing Sakura up the stairs. I'm the father of your kid, shouldn't I get the bed? Sakura whined, her tiredness crashing down on her euphoria. Not yet, you aren't, Ino said, taking no back talk. Thanks for all the suggestions, I did laugh at the joke once. I'm looking at you, Kirby Girl 13 Dream Shadower. If you have any questions about the pregnancy that I haven't answered in this chapter, just remember, it's magic. So, Sakura fiddled with the lamp in Ino's bedroom. She was sitting in the small room that had only enough space for a double bed, one nightstand, on Ino's side of course, a window above the bed that looked out over the treetops and an oak wardrobe that Sakura thought was big enough to house two magical lands. On the guest side of the bed was a door that led to an ensuite which Ino was currently monopolizing. I like the colors. Very mood-setting. It was true the small room was painted red and the bed itself was cream with red flowers that seemed to lounge on the covers. Even the curtains seemed to fall in an enticing way that said, "Hey you in the tree, a blonde ninja might be getting changed, come peek inside." Or that was Sakura's nervous imagination. "Have you changed yet?" Ino called back. "No, I'll do it now." Sakura undressed and felt her hands tremor, which was stupid because she was acting like she was a virgin. That was a land that she left behind years ago. In a painful, embarrassing incident which would forever be one of her most treasured memories. When she turned her back to the door Ino was supposed to come through. She felt shy about Ino seeing her as a girl. She changed until she was in her male form. "So that's what you look like as a boy?" I had wondered since this whole thing began. Ino came out of the bathroom and Sakura took her in stunned. She was leaning against the door in black lacy underwear, her long hair down and flowing freely across her back. She looked commanding and more than a little intimidating as her pale blue eyes combed over her body. They were taking each other in for the first time. Ino obviously had never seen Sakura as a male. She looked slightly underfed and had an effeminate narrow chest and hips. Like most of the boys in the village now that she thought about it. Her face looked more or less the same, only more sharp and pronounced. She looked ridiculous, Ino thought, but she reasoned that it was probably only because she was used to the female version. Sakura had never thought of Ino in a way. Well, she had seen her in changing rooms and things and always thought in a vaguely disinterested way that Ino was gorgeous. Sometimes she used to stare at her flawless skin with envy, but Ino wasn't flawless now. Her skin had scars and overworked muscles still rippled on her arms and legs from when they needed the extra strength when they used to go on missions. She was still beautiful, but it was her face that made Sakura's new body burn. The arrogance that she had hated when they were rivals a lifetime ago was now. The cool, apprising looks made her want to do something silly to make her smile or throw her on the bed and take her to shock the expression away. "Nice." Ino threw the compliment out there because it was awkward and someone had to say something. "I like the fact you aren't hairy." "Thanks," Sakura said, latching onto the conversation like a lifeline. "It's probably because I still shave in my girl form. It must carry over. I thought it made my legs look chicken-like." Ino looked at the legs in question and could see why Sakura had made the comparison. Boy legs would have looked better with the hair. "No," she lied. "As that?" Sakura pointed to Ino's left hip where a circle of skin no bigger than a golf ball was a shiny pink color, "when you threw me out of the way of a fireball." "Yes." Ino nodded pleasantly, "the day those Earth guys attacked." "I didn't think you remembered that." "No, I do. It was so hectic that I don't even think I said thanks," Sakura said, a little embarrassed at her bad manners. "That's okay, it was a pretty rough day for all involved. Hey, do you still have that scar on your wrist from the time when that Akatsuki member gutted you and I was fixing you up?" Sakura said, smiling, and Ino began to as well. "I told you to bite down on something and you grabbed my wrist and bit it." "Yeah, I still have 4 tiny white marks on my forearm." She couldn't show her because of the glamour on the body, but 2 white teeth marks ran perpendicular to each other on either side of her pulse point. It was funny now, but at the time Ino had bit pretty hard and Sakura would have sworn back then she did it out of spite. "That's nice," Ino said, still not making any move to come fully into the room. They stood smiling at each other, having no idea what to do next. "I guess we should." Sakura plunged ahead, waving vaguely towards the bed. "Yeah." Ino took a deep breath and leant into the room. She gestured to Sakura's crotch. "I guess you should wake it up," she finished with a laugh, then her face froze in a bizarre expression. "Or do you need help with that?" "No." Sakura said urgently, stepping back and half shielding herself from Ino. That's okay. It's pretty user-friendly, I can do it myself. What about you? She asked with slight horror. Me? No. I'm fine, Ino said, nodding. Sakura, feeling under pressure, turned away and gave her a few strokes and tried to think nice things. Boys' broad chests. Yowie. Ino's in the middle. Oh, there we go. It was probably the most disturbing of the changes. Sakura having to do this to make sure she had a live sperm count, had masturbate in this form once before. When she was fully hard, it was nice, more than nice, in a she had to touch it now or she would die kind of way. But it was the oddest thing when she was getting hard. The gradual stiffness was crazy, like an itch you couldn't get rid of. How big are you, by the way? Ino asked, and the voice sounded close, so Sakura assumed the blonde had finally joined her in the bedroom. I don't know, I didn't actually measure. She hadn't thought about something so egotistical. It was a science experiment after all, but now she began to worry. What if she was really big? What if she was a monster that Ino would freak out about having inside her? Or worse, the insecurity crept up her spine in the form of a blush. What if she was tiny? What if Ino laughed? Sakura, are you okay? Ino's voice came, sounding worried for her. Yeah, she said and turned. Ino sat back. Huh, she said with a non-comedial look on her face. Huh, Sakura repeated defensively. What does that mean? Oh, nothing, Ino said, it just looks nicer this way. Before it kind of looked like a rotting banana that was left in the sun too long, but now, she shrugged. Sakura's face screwed up as her genitals were likened to rotten fruit. Ino, seeing the look, became flustered and tried to take back what she had sighed. It looks nice now. Very, very. Her hands waved, trying to usher in a compliment as Sakura stood there, her jaw nearly square, it was tensed so tight. Very symmetrical and cute. Like a bald bunny. The tension lay thick in the air before Sakura had to laugh at the lame description. She came over to sit beside Ino. They do look kind of strange, but they feel amazing and can make you feel wonderful things. That was what she had learned after her first time seeing one. She frowned then as a thought occurred to her. Haven't you seen one before? I haven't seen yours, Ino answered coolly. She reached out to touch it and sparks flew as Sakura arched her back. Ino jerked her hand away. Responsive little thing. It's not little, she said defensively. Ino laughed, but Sakura forgave her immediately when she enfolded her hand around it and began to pump. Oh, her eyes rolled back as her hips began to thrust on their own accord. She had to pull Ino's hand away roughly and catch her breath. I'm close, she said in explanation as Ino glared at her. I think we should do it now. Oh, and Ino sat back, suddenly nervous and looking like she would rather be somewhere else. Right, she wiggled until her pants were down, then kicked them away. Sakura then knelt in front of her closed thighs. She waited until Ino spread them herself and she moved quickly upwards, not wanting to look at Ino's. What? Flower. No, that sounded stupid and gay. Her vagina. Way too clinical, but this was a science experiment. Her cunt. Judging from the blush that immediately flowed over her at that word, it wouldn't be usable either. She reached down to position herself. You're on my hair. Ino grouched and Sakura apologized and moved. She took a deep breath and went to enter her again, but Ino stopped her a second time. What? Sakura snapped, her nerves frayed and the need to do something to get rid of the hardness that was throbbing tortuously was becoming too great. I don't think I'm wet enough, Ino said, reaching for a bottle of lotion. She put a liberal amount on her hand, then reached down to rub some on Sakura. Ino. No, don't. But it was too late. With only a few strokes, Sakura arched her back and came. She sprayed all over Ino's spread thighs and belly, and Ino couldn't hide her disgust. Her nose upturned at the sight and she resisted the urge to glare at Sakura. Sakura gritted her teeth and fought against the relaxation that roared through her, turning her muscles to jelly. She flopped on her back, her head coming to rest level with Ino's chest. Sorry, I didn't know you were. Ino trailed off, realizing that she had spoiled their first chance. It's okay, Sakura said in a tone that clearly meant the opposite. Though next time when I say I'm close, I mean I'm going to come if you breath on me. Can we try again? Ino asked, wiping the fluid from her stomach. At least it didn't smell too bad. Sakura threw her arm over her eyes. Not until another half hour. Half hour? Ino questioned, curious. That's what the book says, Sakura said, fighting off sleep. Book? Ino said skeptically. Yes, book. I'm learning what to do with erections from a library book geared towards teenage boys, Sakura said, annoyed. I don't know the full ins and outs of this thing yet, only that it's responsive and quite nice to use. Sorry, Ino said sarcastically, not liking the sharp tone Sakura used. Why don't you just try and get aroused? This will work much better if you don't try and punch me every time I get close. Remember when used to be fun? Ino said, annoyed. Right now? No, I can't. Ow. Sakura jumped off Ino and cradled her privates. Oh, damn, I'm so sorry, Ino said, mortified and extremely apologetic. She rushed to Sakura's huddled frame at the side of the bed and placed her hand on her shoulder. She turned the other woman to her and asked, Are you okay? Sakura had tears in her eyes but nodded feebly. Just give me a few minutes. She swore she was going to apologize to all the men she had kicked or kneed over the years. They might have been evil, but even they didn't deserve this pain. Ino hovered behind her anxiously. Sakura composed herself, then turned around. Okay, let's go again. Gently this time. Ino nodded, still looking guilty. Sakura tried to control herself. She slowed down her thrusts and instead made them firmer and harder. Ino clutched at her arms and moved her hips faster to make up for the slowdown in Sakura's momentum. Agitated blue eyes glared at her, but seeing the strained and sweat-beaten expression on Sakura's face, the blonde grinned evilly. She reached down to Sakura's balls and squeezed while she thrust firmly, taking all of Sakura's length at once. Sakura yelled and her eyes rolled back as she came. Damn you, Ino, she said as the blonde pushed her boneless frame to the side. I swore I was going to make you come this time. Ino laughed and rolled her eyes. Yeah, sure you were. Not my fault you have a small, Sakura mumbled, burying her face in Ino's shoulders. I'll draw you a map next time, Ino said dryly, watching as Sakura fell asleep. So, Sakura said hopefully, laying and sweaty beside Ino on her bed, did you? No, Ino replied curtly. Oh, Sakura acknowledged. She rolled over as awkward silence descended. That was quick, Ino said, looking at Sakura strangely. Sakura flushed, embarrassed. Ino had only taken her top off and her own trousers were still pulled about her ankles. Worked up were we? Ino asked after the initial shock had worn off. She found it incredibly funny that Sakura had come at the sight of her. Leave me alone, she mumbled, reaching for tissues to clean herself up. She didn't look at Ino. Stupid big bouncy. Sakura came back into her office after leaving to get her lunch. She sank down in the chair and resignedly pulled the reports she had to look at towards her. She frowned as she picked up a piece of pink paper that wasn't there before she left. She grinned as she took in the crude drawing of a woman's with a big circle at the top. An arrow emerged from it labeled, "This is what you're looking for, idiot." Beside that was a picture of a girl. She supposed that was her, wearing a miner's hat with a flashlight. Ino actually did draw her a map. She folded it up carefully and put it in her pocket. How about this time? Sakura asked hopefully. Don't worry about it, Ino said, patting her shoulder gently. She reached for her book. Something inside Sakura snapped and she threw herself down the bed. Ino jumped in surprise and Sakura snatched her flailing legs from the air. She opened them widely and plunged her face into Ino's. Ah, what the? Sakura, what are you? Ooh. Ino gasped and arched as Sakura slid her fingers inside and teased her with her tongue. Sakura watched through heavy-lidded eyes as Ino's neck stretched and the muscles strained. She found her and sucked. Ino wailed and nearly kicked her head. She lessened her sucking and fluttered her tongue against the bundle of nerves. Sakura's face eventually swam back into Ino's view, looking decidedly smug. You did there. Twice. About time, Ino said, pulling Sakura down into a heated kiss. I'm ovulating, Ino said, closing and locking the door. I'm at work, Sakura said, shocked. She even waved the papers to show Ino how hard at work she was. Yeah, and I'm on my break, Ino said, dropping her handbag on her desk and pulling up her skirt and bending over. Ino. Sakura yelled, covering her eyes stupidly. We can't do this here, wait until tonight. Ino sat up annoyed and pushed herself into Sakura's lap. She pulled the girl to her for a breath-stealing kiss. Kissing was a new thing that Sakura had found she really liked. She wrestled with her indecision before she gave in. Fine, she reached up and drew the blinds shut. Ino sat back and grinned. Sakura took off her trousers and began to work on her top, but when she saw Ino playing with herself through her panties, she did the Naibuke jutsu and Ino jumped in shock. You didn't change fully. I thought we were in a hurry. She grinned, pulling Ino off the desk and turned her around. She reached down and found Ino was already wet. She groaned and tugged at the blonde's earlobe with her teeth. You've never been this wet before, have you been thinking of something nice? I can feel your. Ino gasped as Sakura pulled her flush against her. Sorry, Sakura said, not wanting to ruin the mood. She moved back slightly. No. Ino pulled her back and Sakura blinked in surprise, then grinned. You're a kinky thing, aren't you? Shut up and make me come, Ino demanded, rubbing against Sakura. She gasped as she felt her hardness. I forgot about that, she said as she reached back and pulled Sakura into a kiss. Ino was twisted, trying to keep her back to Sakura but kiss her as well. Sakura broke the kiss and turned her away so as she wouldn't hurt her when she entered her. It was the first time they had standing up and Sakura realized that Ino was taller than her. She placed her forehead on the blonde's shoulder as her was swallowed in velvet heat. They moved together in sync. They had actually got quite good at. They even enjoyed it now. Sakura looked forward to her nights going out with Ino and then having after. She never knew how funny the blonde could be. Sakura, Ino panted, leaning forward slightly, prompting her. No, Sakura had got more control over herself and liked drawing it out in order to annoy Ino. 2 nights ago she managed to last until Ino was sobbing and threatening to kill her. Ino got her back though the next night. She had learned a move where if she pinched a certain part of her she couldn't come. She had been kept on edge for hours until she was the one sobbing and begging. Sakura, Ino growled, the threat clear in her voice. Ino, she teased back but reached around and found the blonde's. She pinched it softly as she thrust. Ino had her well trained. Ino came and it felt like an earthquake around her. She let go and her hips jerked in a clumsy frenzy before she too came. She fell back on her seat. It rolled away a little with her weight. Ino lay slumped over the desk for a second or two. She then stretched like a cat and rolled to grin at Sakura. She picked up the exhausted girl's underwear from her trousers and wiped away the fluids on her thighs. Sakura grimaced as her panties were ruined but didn't say anything. Ino smoothed her skirt and fixed her hair, and apart from the flush on her skin, looked as if nothing other than a polite conversation had occurred between them. Sakura released the jutsu weakly and retrieved her pants from the floor. Ino took them from her and knelt between her thighs. Sakura blushed as Ino was so close to her female, but Ino just gently dressed her. She did up the zip and button and pulled Sakura down for a sweet chaste kiss. I have to go now, she said. Let's go dancing tonight. I don't have the energy, Sakura confided in her, feeling as if all her bones had melted. Ino rolled her eyes, pretending to be upset. I obviously need a girl with more stamina. She won't be as pretty as me and you'll have to go through the trouble of training her, Sakura warned. Ino sighed, defeated. Guess I'm stuck with you then. Guess so, Sakura said as Ino rose. She knew she had a sappy smile on her face, but she hoped Ino would think it was due to her orgasm. Do you think they heard? Ino asked, her eye jerking playfully towards the locked door. If you get a statue in your honor, I think it's safe to say yes, Sakura said dryly. Ino waved, and like an idiot Sakura waved back, grinning like a sap. When the blonde had gone, she attacked her paperwork with new enthusiasm, unable to wipe her smile away. Move over. Sakura's shoulder was roughly shoved and with a start she woke up. Wah! She said groggily, lifting her heavy head to look over her shoulder. Switch sides, Ino said, pushing Sakura again. Sakura, still not fully aware of what was happening, looked at the blonde in confusion. I don't want to sleep in the wet patch, Ino said, then glared as she added, again. Wet patch? What? Sakura lifted her head to see what the problem was. A sizable wet patch did seem to be where they had had a few moments before. It's your fluids. It's both ours, Ino said, pushing Sakura again, and it's my bed, so move. No, Sakura said defiantly, settling back down in the bed. She had an early meeting in the morning, she needed the rest. Besides, sleeping in that stuff just sounded disgusting. Ino roughly shoved her again and Sakura quickly turned and grasped her attacking hand. She pulled the blonde down onto her chest and away from the wet spot. There now. Go asleep. Ino remained stiff as a board before she finally melted against Sakura using her small pillows. Ino was still resting on her chest when she woke up in the morning, and Sakura found that she didn't mind the closeness. Sakura hovered in the doorway of Ino's apartment. Ino looked up from her book curiously. She was folded under a comfy blanket on the couch. She wasn't supposed to come over tonight. Sakura was blushing bright and trying to look Ino in the eye without quite making it. Found a book. She held up the book that was shiny new but had little scarps of paper sticking out of the sides as markers. Ino squinted at the title, a little lost. When she saw the illustration of people on the front, she grinned and sat her own book down. Sakura grinned as well and nearly skipped after her into the bedroom. A little later, Ino sat down with a wince at her kitchen stool. She placed a bag of frozen peas between her legs and just glared at Sakura, who was fluttering nervously back and forth, getting water and ice cream and anything she could to relieve her guilt. Sakura, Ino growled, shifting on the peas and wincing, you are going to burn that book while I watch. Sakura nodded frantically. Sakura and Ino both walked into the bedroom. Slowly, Sakura started to unbutton her shirt. She still had the budgets to allocate in the hospital. There seemed to be a recent outbreak of venereal diseases. Maybe she should think of trying to get an awareness campaign drawn up. The gynecologists were also crying out for more money. She threw her shirt on the dresser absently and started to unbuckle her belt. The always needed something, but she gave them the lion's share of the budget last quarter, so they would have to make do. Oh, and then there was the fall in residence. She might need to do a recruitment drive. Are you ready? Ino asked politely. Fully. She sat on the bed waiting. Oh, yeah, gave me a second. She formed the seals and was male. Sakura. Ino reached for the bottle of oil and soaked her hands. Crap, that reminded her she also needed to look over the supplies and restocking. All wards were complaining at the lack of disinfectant for visitors. Ino waved her over and proceeded to get her ready. Sakura groaned, her eyes tracking upward. Did she lock her office door? It doesn't matter, someone would take care of it. She was fully erect and Ino laid down. Sakura took her place inside the blonde's spread thighs. The burn unit also needed new machinery. She reached down to insert herself but frowned as she felt Ino. You're dry, she said. Sorry. Ino frowned and wiggled, reaching down to touch herself. Sakura caught her hands and sat back. Ino, no offense or anything, but I'm a little bored. Not the most romantic thing she could have said. Ino let out a sigh of relief. Me too. These last few weeks it's just been, and more. Sakura laughed. That doesn't sound like a bad thing to anyone else. They're not the ones that's sore and stretched, Ino grumbled. Are you okay? Sakura asked with doctorly concern. Oh yeah, nothing a few days of rest won't fix, Ino smiled. Come on, Sakura said, pulling Ino out of the bed. She threw the blonde neatly discarded clothes at her before she climbed into her own. Let's go out and do something that's not related at all. Where's the fun in that? Ino asked dryly, tugging her t-shirt over her head. Sakura left work early and swore that 8 nurses were about to go into cardiac arrest. She's leaving early. Has she ever done that before? One excited nurse whispered to her colleague. No, it must be love, he whispered back. It could be a booty call, the nurse supposed, and Sakura grinded her teeth together in frustration. She hit the elevator button again, but the doors didn't open. You don't bring chocolates to a booty call, he told the nurse with an eye roll. She must be wooing them. I'm so pleased she's found someone, the nurse said just as the elevator pinged open. Sakura gratefully jumped in and hit the ground floor button, not even waiting to see if anyone else needed the lift. Sakura walked to the flower shop, determined not to let what they said affect her. She was bringing Ino chocolates because the other night had been fun. Instead of they went out, had dinner and took a walk around the town. It was the most fun she had had in ages. She actually felt regret when the next day came and she had to skip meeting with Ino due to an accident involving a collapsed bridge. Ino was behind the counter sniffing some of the flowers. She looked up as Sakura entered and triggered the bell. The blonde's face lit up and Sakura felt her own do the same. "Hey," she said, placing the chocolates on the counter, "you ready for another round? If not, I heard from one of the interns that there's a concert on in the forest. We could go and be the oldest ones there and loudly tell the kids how great the music back in our day was." She was half hoping that Ino would go to the concert but didn't mind the other option. "I didn't get the chance to tell you with the bridge thing and all, but I'm pregnant," Ino said with barely contained excitement. "You are? That's great," Sakura said, elated. She hugged Ino over the counter and they both laughed at the awkwardness of it. "So, that means you're off the hook," Ino said as they separated. "You don't have to entertain me anymore." "Oh," Sakura said, her face falling for just a second. "Of course, thank God for that." She forced out a laugh and hoped it didn't sound too strained. "Though if you want we could still go." Ino looked at her strangely and smiled in confusion. "Why would we do that?" "Maybe you're bored or something," Sakura said, feeling like an idiot when Ino still stared at her like she was an unusual bug. "No, I'm fine, but thanks anyway," Ino said. She reached out for Sakura's hand and said earnestly, "Thank you, Sakura, I really mean it." Sakura smiled feebly, feeling abandoned for some strange reason. "You're welcome. Hey, have fun at the concert." Ino smiled and seemed to be waiting for Sakura to leave. Sakura nodded. "Right, okay." By then, she hoped she didn't sound as awkward as she felt. Ino waved as she left the store. It was the first time she was back in her apartment since the whole Ino thing began. She had usually just stayed the night at Ino's, and then when Ino got pregnant she spent the week in her office before she was chased out by her secretary. Had the two-bedroom apartment really been so big? Sakura sat her folders down on her desk. Her apartment had 2 bedrooms, a separate bathroom, then one big room that doubled as her living room with a small kitchenette area. It spoke volumes about her life, the fact that her living room was dominated by a dark, thick oak desk and bookcase filled with textbooks, with the couch and TV thrown in the corner like an afterthought. She stared around the room in a somewhat lost fashion. She didn't know what to do. The door was thrown open loudly and 1010 stalked into the place like the cure for boredom. She had a 6-pack of beer under one arm and she threw another at Sakura, who still managed to catch it even in her surprise. 1010 what? This thing still have cable, or did you forget to pay the bill again? Tenten asked, flopping down on the couch and aiming the remote at the TV. No, I'm pretty sure it's still on, Sakura said, making her way to the couch. Why are you here? Because you're an idiot, Tenten said without looking at her. She channel flicked to see what was on. Sakura frowned at the insult and poked Tenten's side as retaliation. I didn't think you were as stupid as to actually go through with impregnating Ino. I honestly, foolishly, gave you more credit. I won't make that mistake again, Tenten said, unhappily popping open her beer. What? Sakura asked, still lost. I saw Ino buying a pregnancy kit and then me and half the village heard her confirm it. I waited a few days, but when you didn't come and tell me how great your plan had worked out and how you're such a great ninja, I decided to swing by the hospital. Did you know that the entire staff have refused to treat any male that's between the age of 30 and 40? Sakura was shocked and somewhat appalled, causing Tenten to laugh. Yep, they say that they're all going to suffer until they find out which, and I quote, evil son of a bitch dared to dump our chief. Please tell me you're joking, Sakura said, horrified and embarrassed. Tenten only shook her head, grinning from ear to ear. So I put 2 and 2 together and figured that you need to blow off some steam and get drunk with me. You didn't realize you would get emotionally involved, did you? Give me that, Sakura said, snatching Tenten's beer out of her hand and taking a long drink. Atta girl. Tenten encouraged. When they were suitably tipsy and laying with their head pillowed on the opposite arms of the couch and their legs intertwining somewhere in the middle, Sakura idly held up her beer bottle to the light and said, I wonder if it would have my eyes. If God's kind it will have Ino's, Tenten said, her head hanging off the couch making her neck stretch. What? Sakura said, making the effort to lift her head in order to look at Tenten in annoyance. Hers is nicer than yours, surely you noticed that when you were screwing her. Tenten said. Sakura, for the sake of her sanity, decided to ignore that. She let her head flop down on the couch arm. Tenten did have a point. Ino had a great. Why do I keep thinking about them? It is your kid, Tenten drolly. But, it wasn't, not really. She had agreed to leave Ino alone after the conception. Ino had made it clear that she didn't want anything more from her other than her genes. She sighed. I hope it doesn't get my forehead. Me too, Tenten agreed in commiseration. Hey Sakura. Sakura's head jerked up at the happy voice of Ino. The blonde stood in the doorway poised to knock. It's not a bad time, is it? Yes, she was swamped with budget deadlines. No, come on in. What are you doing here? She said, pushing her papers to the side and smiling at Ino. Ino came further into the room and sat on the chair opposite her. It was at my first scan today. Really? You should have told me, I would have been there. Sakura quickly rushed on as Ino frowned at that. How did it go? Ino still seemed slightly bothered but brushed it away as the joy of the scan filled her again. It turns out I'm 2 months along. 2 months? Sakura said, shocked. She did some mental calculations. That meant that Ino had conceived either the first or second time they had had. How did you not know before? Ino raised her eyebrow, not appreciating Sakura's tone, but Sakura was still reeling at the fact she was a daddy for 2 months. Well, I never had a regular period due to all the training we did, and my diets never really helped, and then there was the trauma of the war, and I also happened to read the instructions wrong on the pregnancy tests I took previously. Sakura had to laugh as Ino's tirade dwindled down to an embarrassed flush. You read the instructions wrong. Did the plus and negative signs confuse you? I got the kind with the kittens, Ino admitted reluctantly. Sakura laughed. Shut up. It's not funny. Ino grouched, her face warm. In every other kit, blue means negative. It was a reasonable assumption to think that the blue kitten meant I wasn't pregnant. So, Sakura said, reining in her laughter, what you mean is that you didn't read the instructions wrong, but that you just didn't read them. No one likes a smart Sakura, Ino said. How is everything with it? Do you know the? Sakura let Ino off the hook and continued with the questions she really wanted answering. Everything's fine, so far so good, and I decided not to know the of the baby, Ino said. I just thought I would stop by since I was near, let you know what's going on. Ino stood to leave. Sakura stood as well but didn't know what to do. Ino was walking out and waving goodbye, her mouth opened before her brain could stop it or think of anything good to say. Ino. Ino stopped and turned with an expectant and polite smile. What is it, Sakura? You've always been bad at DIY and stuff, so if you need help with the crib, or anything really, her mouth opened to expose her teeth in what she hoped was a smile that said, Sakura was the person to call for assembly, despite the fact she doesn't own a toolbox. Ino laughed. That's okay, I've already roped Shika into that duty. Oh, well, good. Ino turned to go again. Ino. Ino turned back once more, annoyance starting to filter across her face. Yes, Sakura. She said less patiently. Her face twitched, and for some reason looking at Ino's eyes, which were starting to get angry at the silence. Ino shifted her weight, but the blood in Sakura's body was fizzing and trying to backtrack from her mouth. She hadn't felt this nervous since her first mission. She didn't have her teammates here to help her this time. I want to be your daddy. She winced at how wrong that sounded, then quickly tried to take it back. No. I mean that I want to be involved. Like if you need. Her hands groped the air trying to pull out examples of her usefulness. Ice cream. Yes, ice cream. If you're too tired or fat to go get it yourself, I could be the one to do that. Ino looked less than impressed with her offer of personal ice cream woman. Her face darkened until it was nearly purple with fury. She pulled her head down until her chin met her neck and advanced on Sakura like a rabid dog. Sakura, shocked and not a little frightened, was driven back until she had to scramble on top of her desk. Ino thrust her hands down on either side of Sakura and leant over her threateningly. No. How dare you, Sakura? I told you from the beginning what I wanted from you. How dare you try to take this away from me? Ino's voice when it came was a rumbling growl that grated on the mind. Sakura was speechless. She had never seen someone so angry at something she had said. Naruto, yes, but not her. You won't take this away from me. I won't let you. Ino threw herself from the table and stormed out. Sakura gingerly felt to see if her head was still attached. What the hell just happened? Word on the street is that you're in hiding in Ino's public enemy number 1 at the hospital, Tenten said, stacking the world history section of her shop. I am not in hiding, I'm merely writing up my report in seclusion, Sakura lied. She was hiding from Ino. Not because she was afraid of another serial killer episode, but because she was embarrassed to be near her. To be rejected so thoroughly wasn't a blow to her ego but a shattering strike to her self-confidence. Seems like hiding to me, Tenten continued, stacking books. Oh, and by the way, you might want to avoid Tamari. She's been going around like a bear with a sore tooth trying to find you. She's been out the front twice. Tamari. What did I do to her? Sakura asked, confused and annoyed. Some else wanted to give her a hard time. Her and Ino have been really close since she married Shikamaru, so I'm guessing that it's something to do with that, Tenten said, finishing her stacking and turning to look at Sakura. Damn all these women after my blood, I should have just stayed straight, Sakura said, and Tenten laughed and patted her on the shoulder sympathetically. She was forced from her hiding place in the bookstore when Tenten got sick of the sight of her. She had finished her report of the experiment that was now rocking her once wave-less life. All she had to do now was track Ino's progress to see if the baby was progressing normally and put on the conclusion, which she wouldn't be able to do until the birth. It was about 4 o'clock and the streets teemed with activity. She decided to take a shortcut through the park in order to avoid the flower shop and reach the safety of her apartment faster. Work was not an option because if she had to look at another sympathetic face or angry on her behalf expression, she was going to hit someone hard. She tripped and fell on her face over nothing. Haha, you're it. She turned to see a mini Shikamaru laughing at her. Behind him were a few other kids. We're playing tag with powers. You have to chase us now. Sakura rolled her eyes and pushed herself to her feet. When it became obvious she had no intention of chasing the other kids, she was tripped again. Why, you little brats? She growled and hurled into the center of them like a bull into a red flag. The children dispersed in a cloud of delighted laughter, scrambling in all directions. She chased after each of them, grabbing at girls and boys alike. They evaded her easily, dodging and using their height to their advantage, going around her and through her legs. Somewhere in all the melee she began to laugh. She caught the little blonde girl that launched herself from a tree at Sakura's head. The added weight made her stumble back, where she tripped over a boy kneeling on all fours. It was a strategic attack. Sakura fell once again and was dog-piled by the little buggers. Get off. She laughed, threatened. I swear I'll kill every one of you little brats. Since she was laughing, the kids didn't take her seriously and the dog pile continued until only Sakura's head could be seen. One thing was for sure, these little brats would make excellent ninjas. She continued to thrash and threaten, but was careful not to hurt any of the little bodies. I swear, Shika, if you've dog-piled another old woman, I'm going to skin you alive. A child slid down the dog pile until he covered Sakura's face, but she knew that voice anywhere. Tamari. The kids quickly fled the avenging mum and Sakura had nowhere to hide. Tamari, who had been reaching forward to help the poor person waylaid by her son, paused. She straightened with a glare. I have a few things I'd like to say to you. Sakura pushed herself to her feet and was unprepared for the little Shikamaru double to take her hand. Okawa-san, she's didn't mind playing with us. Honest. Isn't that right? She looked down at the wide-eyed innocent child and swallowed hard. No, it was fun. So, you here to steal someone else's baby? Tamari glared. What? No. I was just on my way home, Sakura defended herself. Shika, go play. When the little boy hesitated, Tamari glared at him and he scampered off. You have Ino extremely upset. I just wanted to be. She trailed off and looked away. She wondered if her kid would dogpile on Ino with all its friends. Probably not. Ino would kill it. It doesn't matter, she said, pushing past the blonde. Oh, but it does, Tamari said, grabbing her arm roughly and spinning her back. Are you going to bring it to the Hokage? What? Sakura frowned in confusion. Are you going to take the case to the Hokage? Tamari bit out again. Because I don't care how popular you are, I won't let you steal her kid. I have no intention of doing something like that, Sakura said, appalled. I asked and she said no. I'll respect her decision, even if she didn't like it. Drawn-out court cases and arguments would only sour things between her and Ino, making it difficult for the child in the long run. She didn't want Ino to hate her. Good, Tamari said, seeming to lose some of her hostility. She then deflated and pinched her nose in a very Shikamaru-like fashion. This whole thing has been so bothersome. Ino's scared to death you're going to get into a custody battle. I knew this was a bad idea from the start. I knew she wanted a kid, but the way she went about it was ridiculous. Tamari then began to mime what seemed like an old conversation. She seemed to be unaware of Sakura still standing there. Ino, I said, if you want a baby so bad, I'll take you to a big city and you can get a rent boy for the night. But no, that wasn't good enough for Ino. She should have just listened to me in the first place. Tenten thinks the same, Sakura said. She thinks I should have just listened to her from the start. Seems like a smart girl, that Tenten, Tamari said, walking away. Come on, I want to get to know more about the father of my godchild. Like how the hell you managed to impregnate my friend to start with. Sakura licked her ice cream and watched Shika play on the climbing frame. Tamari sat beside her laughing, her own ice cream in danger of falling. You had with her as a man. Ino had with a man. Yeah, Sakura said, slightly confused about that comment. That's rich. Tamari wiped a tear from her eye. They sat in silence for a little while, the occasional chuckle escaping Tamari now and again. Why do you want to be involved with this kid anyway? It seems to me that you were fine with being the donor before. Sakura shifted and her gaze turned inward. Being with Ino had been the most fun she had had in ages, but it was more than that, she was sure. At the start I didn't actually realize or fully realize what I was doing. I didn't understand that there would be a little kid with half my chromosomes running around. It was just a science experiment, a challenge that no one else had overcome. Then it got real. Tamari stood and waved Shika over to her. You're an idiot. So I've been told, Sakura said dryly. If you don't do anything stupid to annoy Ino, I might put in a good word for you, Tamari said, scooping the little boy up in her arms. Thanks, Sakura smiled. The mother and son just waved back half-heartedly. That had gone much better than she thought it would. Things seemed to be looking up. Is this true? The door to her office flew open with all the force of a million angry deities. Sakura stopped writing immediately to see the thunderbolt of fury surging towards her desk. A familiar set of notes was hurled onto her desk as Ino, breathing heavily with rage, loomed over the sitting doctor. That's my report. How did you get that? Sakura asked, picking up her work with a frown. She had left it safely tucked away at Tenten's. How did Ino get a hold of it? Is it true? Ino demanded again. What is what true? Sakura asked, frustrated. She hadn't seen Ino since her last angry outburst nearly 2 weeks ago, and now the other woman was shouting at her again. All that anger couldn't be good for the baby. There. This. Ino snapped the report off Sakura and opened it to the page that had greatly offended her. Sakura peered attentively down at the paper, unwilling to take her eyes off the thundercloud before her for too long. Side effect and dangers. Oh yeah, you should have known that everything has its drawbacks, Ino, Sakura said calmly. Why didn't you tell me about them? Ino, if possible, seemed to get more angry. Because they only affect me, not you or the baby, Sakura snapped, getting tired of being shouted at. Damn it, I still had the right to know. Ino screamed. What do you care? You got what you wanted. Everything. You didn't seem to care about me when you were in here screaming not too long ago. Sakura yelled, surging to her feet to be on some equal level with Ino. Sakura, this could have brought on the menopause early for you. It could mean that you're infertile. How could you guilt me like this? Ino said. Guilt you? Believe it or not, Ino, I didn't think how this could affect you. Sakura said, feeling indignant at the other woman's gall to insinuate she was using this as a guilt trip. Oh, then how did this end up on the counter of the flower shop? Ino said with righteous energy. It should have been a Tenten, Sakura growled as she realized what had happened. Tenten had put the report there in a misguided attempt to help. She was going to kill her. Listen, Ino, I'm sorry about this. What's done is done and can't be changed. Don't worry, I don't plan on using this or anything else in an attempt to take away your child. The last two words were painful, but she got them out. Ino took a breath and seemed to calm down. For all of 2 seconds, damn you, Sakura, she said with disgust before slamming the door shut behind her. She was really getting sick of that. Tenten, she yelled in the empty bookshop, get out here so I can kill you. I take it Ino stopped by. A disembodied voice called from the stacks. Yes, with my report in hand. She thought I left it in order to guilt trip her. Sakura said, starting her search along the stacks. What? No way. Dramatic much. The voice called back. Well, how did you think she would react? Sakura blazed again. I thought she would be a bit more grateful, Tenten answered. Her voice was much closer now. Sakura crouched down ready to attack. She saw the other woman trying to blend in with the light-colored scrolls. She would have missed her if the other girl hadn't called out to her. She tackled the bun head and they grappled along the floor, knocking against shelves and displacing books. Sakura ended up on top due to her fury, and she glared down at Tenten before she unclenched her hands from around her friend's neck. I know you were only trying to help, she sighed, but Ino doesn't appreciate being pressured. Like it or not, she has more say over that kid than I do, and we'll just have to respect that. But that sucks, Tenten whined, it's half yours as well. Sakura shook her head. I give up that right when I went into this thing thinking of it as a science experiment. She loved it from the start. Tenten sighed, resigned, then groaned as she caught sight of the mess they had made. This is going to take me ages to clean up. The telephone was a great invention. Sakura had always thought so. Many times she had wished she could have had access to one when she used to do her missions. They would have made some things a lot easier. But the new device had her cursing the advances of technology when it shrieked shrilly in her bedroom at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hello, she said groggily. I want ice cream. What? She stared at the phone in a daze. The phone wanted ice cream. I want a tub of strawberry and chocolate ice cream, and I've left my door unlocked, so hurry up. Ino, Sakura said, her sleep-fogged mind finally realizing who was on the other end of the phone. Hurry up, Sakura. Click. Dial tone. Sakura put the phone back on its hook and sat up. She ran her hand through her tangled hair and wondered if what just happened was real. She decided she couldn't risk not doing it, so heaved herself out of bed. She stumbled her way into her pants and dirty t-shirt she had worn the day before. Yawning, she closed her apartment door and then realized a big problem. Where the hell was she going to get ice cream at 3 o'clock in the morning? As expected, the ice cream parlor was closed. She nibbled at her lip. Ino was giving her a chance, she couldn't blow it. She infiltrated the shop like the ninja she was. She got the ask for ice cream and left money, slightly more than the ice cream was worth, and a note to explain what had happened. She would swing by in the morning to clear up any misunderstandings. She exited the shop as if she had never been. Ino, she called softly in the darkened room. She had been here enough times to know the layout without turning on a light. She made her way to Ino's familiar bedroom and opened the door. Ino had sat up reading, waiting for her. The blonde was now slumped over her pillows, her book forgotten in her lap. Sakura smiled and crept out to put the ice cream in the fridge. She then went back to straighten Ino and turn off the light. As she turned to go, a hand stopped her and pulled her down beside the blonde. We'll work it out in the morning, Ino said stiffly. Hardly daring to breath, Sakura shifted to kick off her shoes and settle for the night. She snuck out in the morning because she had a meeting with the chiefs of each department. She left a note to explain to Ino so she didn't think she had changed her mind. When she reached the hospital, the entire place was holding one whispered conversation. When she was spotted, the noise died abruptly. She glanced around in confusion. Her secretary was pushed forward. She held the hand of a young boy and lifted him up so he was in front of her. Speaking around the boy, she asked, "Is it true? Did you really come here from Yamanka Sands?" Sakura now understood the reason for the innocent shield. She growled, "Do you people have nothing better to do than spy on me?" The entire hospital put their heads down like abashed children. She walked past them, but her secretary once again thrust the boy in front of her and tentatively spoke again, "Is it true but? Did Ino change her mind about the baby?" Sakura looked at them amazed and annoyed they knew so much. She threw her hands up and gave in, "Yes, we're talking about it now." The whole hospital erupted in cheers. Medical charts, flyers, canes and bedpans were thrown in the air with jubilation. Sakura received many pats on the back and congratulations on her way to her office. She stopped and watched as nurses and orderlies danced with patients and doctors. A smile tugged at her lips, but she tried to hide it. She tried to scowl and sound angry as she shouted, "Can we please get back to work? I have a hospital to run. People are treating me like I'm carrying the Messiah." Sakura shut the filing cabinet with a snap. "Ino," she said with surprise. She dropped the file onto the top of the cabinet, then hurried to usher the blonde into a seat. "I'm sorry about all that. I didn't tell them. They have spies. Or they're half-decent ninjas," Ino said drolly. She held up a carton of vanilla ice cream. "Mr. Yen's going to rename vanilla to Van Ino." "Good," Sakura said nervously. "Now everyone can eat you." Ino looked at Sakura abashed, and Sakura mentally slapped herself. She coughed into her hand and then rubbed the back of her neck. "I'm sorry, I just get so nervous around you lately." "Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. We should have talked before this." Ino leant forward and placed her hand on Sakura's knee. Sakura blushed and moved to sit in the seat beside Ino. "You want to talk now? If you don't mind, I could come back later," Ino said, making as if to rise. "No." Sakura quickly stopped her, then pulled back her hand. "This is more important." "Well," Ino took a deep breath, then laughed nervously. Sakura did the same, hanging on Ino's every word. "I know. If you want to be involved, I won't stop you. But remember that the basic rules are my call. Things like curfew and manners are my call, and I expect you to support me in those." She nodded. "Sounds fair, but what about the big stuff?" "We do that together," Ino said, mentally ticking things off in her rehearsed speech, like picking the name and what school he or she will go to. "You know, it would be easier if we found out the babies," Sakura said. Ino shifted but shook her head. "I want to be surprised. We can call it Bambi if you want. I always liked the cartoon." "Well, it is, dear, to me." She smiled and Ino frowned. "Did you always make such corny jokes?" Sakura laughed. "Yes, actually, but no one really noticed because Naruto's were worse." "I hope Bambi gets my sense of humor," Ino said, standing. "Me too," Sakura said. "There's something else though," Ino said, her expression serious. "What?" "I don't want this child to be part of your case study. It'll be looked at by all these doctors and poked and prodded and the subject of debates if you publish it. I would appreciate if you don't," Ino said, then continued slowly, unable to look Sakura in the eye. "In fact, if you do, I don't think I could be around you. How would I know if you still thought of them as a science project?" Sakura sat back stunned. That was all her hard work. Ino was asking her to hinder the medical process, to wait until someone else came up with the idea and got the credit because nothing stayed undisturbed for long in science. She thought it over, then gave the only answer she could: "Okay. I won't publish my findings. All that hard work gone but not wasted." Ino nodded, relieved, and the air became much thinner. Sakura smiled back, excited at the prospect of being included. She got up and opened the door for the blonde. Staff immediately snapped back to what they were doing and pretending that they hadn't had their ears pressed to the door 2 seconds ago. Sakura was in such a good mood that she wasn't going to yell at them. She escorted Ino out. Call me if you need anything. You'll get sick of me with an offer like that, Ino warned. Sakura waved away the concern. Ino, what are you doing? Sakura demanded. Ino raised her eyebrow at the sharp tone, but Sakura still looked annoyed. She was about to jump down from the counter, but Sakura nearly had a heart attack as she waited until the other woman came and lifted her down. You could be hurt, Sakura said, checking to see if Ino was indeed okay. I have changed a light bulb before, Sakura, Ino said, pushing away from the pink-haired girl. You were never pregnant before though, Sakura said, following Ino behind the counter. Ino slammed it behind her in annoyance. She reached up to pull the blinds, but Sakura was there. She watched amused as the smaller woman nearly strained something trying to reach them. Sakura eventually pulled the shutter and Ino was slightly impressed. She sighed and waved for Sakura to lock the door. She turned on the hose to give the flowers a quick drink before she went to bed. Sakura followed her up the stairs and Ino kept glancing back at her little shadow with annoyance. Are you hungry? Ino asked, going into the kitchen filling the pot with water. Yeah, that would be nice, Sakura said. She then smiled. Look at what I got, Bambi. Ino looked at the white rabbit that Sakura held as if it were the secret fortune of the Hokage. She smiled, but when she turned away she rolled her eyes. She tore through the pack of noodles with her teeth and was about to add it to the boiling water when Sakura stopped her. That's what you're eating, Sakura said, disgusted. Yeah, it's quick. I've had a long day at work. You know I only offered you to be polite. You don't have to eat it, Ino said, shrugging out of Sakura's hold. Gimme, Sakura said, nudging Ino out of the way. I'll make you some real food. Go watch TV or something. Ino frowned and left. I'll have a Coke please, she smiled at the waitress who nodded. Sakura frowned at her choice of drink and Ino growled. Sakura her head and pretended nothing had happened. Also give me anything that's cooked in a white wine sauce. Sakura winced at the waitress left. Ino savored every bit of her steak in the sauce. She chewed it with deliberate relish as Sakura shuddered with every bite. The worse than normal morning sickness was worth it. They were watching TV. Ino was eating cookies and laughing. She reached forward for her milk, but Sakura jerked in order to get there first. She gave the milk to the blonde, then took it off her after she drank so she didn't have to exert herself stretching. Ino smiled and tried to remember that Sakura was trying to help, not annoy the living daylights out of her. Here, I got this. Ino found her shopping bag swept away from her and into Sakura's arms. Where did you come from? She asked, frowning, flexing her hands where the shopping bag had bit into her flesh. I saw you from my office window, so I came to help, Sakura said, taking the other bag from Ino. You ran out of work to come and carry my groceries, Ino said, the vein in the side of her face beginning to throb. It's okay, the meeting wasn't that important, Sakura said, smiling. Ino took a deep breath. Remember, she's trying to help. Her hands clenched. She was trying to help. She took a deep, painful breath and said, thanks. Ino frowned as she saw her reflection in the flower shop window. She had come outside to place a fresh display of sunflowers but caught sight of her rounded figure. Her clothes were becoming tight and her well-developed stomach muscles were fading and bulging with new life. Turned to the side, it was the first time in her life that she had a gut. She pulled loose her top from her trousers, but the bulge still showed slightly. Sakura's face appeared at her shoulder in the glass. You're beautiful, Ino. Well, I know that, Ino said, brushing Sakura aside. Sometimes Sakura actually did help. Ino rolled out of bed and stumbled to her kitchen. She woke up abruptly when she opened the cupboards and found nothing on the top shelves but everything crammed into the bottom two. She sighed, frustrated, and began her search. A few moments later she stomped over to the phone. Sakura, where did you put my coffee? She demanded. Oh, I threw it out. It's unhealthy for the baby, Sakura chirped through the phone. Ino slammed the receiver down on its hook. Her eye twitched. Sakura had gone too far this time. Ino, what's wrong? Are you okay? Sakura's concern flooded the phone and Ino grinned, thinking of her plan. I just got a new plant today, Sakura. It's a leech plant. Usually I can handle it safely with a chakra barrier, but since chakra would hurt the baby, Ino let her voice trail off. You know what? Forget it. I'm sure it won't take long. Bambi won't even feel it, I bet. No, Sakura cried. I'll be there in a few minutes. Ino sat back and smiled. Sakura emerged from the storage room. Her pink hair flew in every direction and a slightly burnt smell wafted after her. You left out the part where it shocks you if you touch its thorns with chakra. Sakura twitched involuntarily as another jolt went through her. Oh, Ino said with feigned innocence, I can't seem to think straight without my coffee. Sakura flopped onto a stool and glared at the blonde. Ino smirked back. Ino stood on a chair as she replaced everything in her top shelves, including her coffee. She had dragged Sakura out shopping with her and forced her to stand there in total silence as she filled her wooden basket to overflowing with sushi, full-fat dairy products that may or may not have been pasteurized, red meat, coleslaw, soy sauce. She didn't even like soy sauce, but she was taking it anyway. And coffee, lots of coffee, and the kind of ice cream kids could only take a bite of before going into a sugar coma. She got 2 tubs. Sakura flinched with every item that hit the basket. She looked ghastly pale and sick. Ino had never been so happy. She got the special kind of chip that you could dip into anything just to really make Sakura turn green. She didn't plan on eating most of it as some could actually harm the baby, but she wouldn't tell Sakura that. She was fighting for freedom. When they reached the checkout, Sakura miserably reached for her purse. She had to pay for this as the cherry on top of her punishment. No one stole Ino's coffee. No one. Sakura. Sakura jumped as her name was shrieked. She had been reviewing medical cases in her office when her secretary hurled into her room and slammed the door. Quickly, Sakura-sama. You go out the window, we'll hold her off. Her secretary grabbed her arm and hustled her to an open window. What? Get off. What's happening? Sakura said, her weariness rising as she struggled in the other woman's grip. She was already halfway pushed onto the window ledge when the door burst open in a fiery explosion. There you are, you tramp. My door. Sakura yelled, outraged. She threw the fussing secretary off her and turned to face the intruder. The smoke cleared to reveal a very pissed off blonde. Ino. Sakura said, confused. I'm going to kill you, Ino enunciated with deliberate loathing. Sakura felt fear steal over her for no reason. Surely Ino was exaggerating. She hadn't did anything. Oh no. She found out about the coffee. Now Ino. Sakura began nervously. I only switched to decafe and you can barely notice the difference. Twins. Ino growled like an attacking bear. She advanced on Sakura with deadly intent. Twins. Sakura said, delighted. Today was Ino's scan. Twins, Ino affirmed, and Sakura's newfound joy withered at the venom in the blonde's voice. They don't run in my family. Ah, hee hee. Sakura started to back away as Ino skirted the desk and got much too close for comfort. My grandmother was a twin. And you didn't think that was worth mentioning? Ino said with a crazy look in her eye. Well, I was the father in this case. I didn't think it was relevant. Sakura said desperately as she hit a wall. Leave now. Ino didn't even look to see the secretary scramble for safety. Her hands thumped down on either side of Sakura's head. You didn't think it was relevant. I have 2 babies inside me. But that's good. Sakura tried to be positive and not scared witless. No, it's not. And a frantic, panicked tone entered Ino's voice for the first time. There's 2 of them. Having one was scary enough, but now they can double team me. Sakura realized what was wrong. She smiled gently at Ino and hugged her. Ino still leant against the wall, then slowly returned the embrace. I'm so scared, Sakura. Ino whispered. What if I don't know what to do with them? Then I will, or we'll ask someone. And if all that fails, we can give them up for adoption. Sakura grinned as Ino gave a wet laugh. Ino allowed herself to be seated on the couch and Sakura sat at her side and stroked her hair. Ino lay down and the raised bump of her stomach became more prominent. Ino placed her hands on it and seemed to marvel. To Sakura, she seemed quite small to be 4 months along and carrying twins. She absently made a note to feed Ino more. Her hand twitched to touch the bump, but she hesitated, then shelved the desire altogether. It somehow felt wrong to intrude on Ino's personal space like that. She settled for watching the blonde's pale hand stroke the bump lovingly. What are we going to call it now? Sakura asked, sitting on Ino's couch as the blonde ate twice her body weight in pasta. Huh, Ino grunted. She had skipped lunch but wasn't going to tell Sakura that. Well, we were calling the baby Bambi, but now there's two, so what do we call them? Sakura asked, frowning, trying to think of names. We'll just call them the twins, Ino said. It seemed obvious to her. By the way, did you increase the maternity ward's budget? Yeah, we have updated machines, Sakura said, rolling her eyes. We should be able to detect twins on the first scan now. Honestly, the way Ino got on, it was like her hospital was using medieval equipment. It was an honest mistake on the doctor's part. He was rushed and didn't notice the second heartbeat. He was now the laughing stock of the maternity floor, but it would teach him to pay attention. Which also reminded her that she had to find the money for refresher courses. She groaned. No one liked to take a refresher course, even she had hated it when she was working on the floor. She was going to hear grumbling now. She grabbed Ino's nearly empty glass and refilled it with milk. Ino glared at her and swallowed what was in her mouth. I didn't want any more milk. I wanted orange juice. Milk's better for the baby. Sakura waved away the blonde's ire. Ino slowly set her fork down. Get out, she said calmly, and Sakura stared at her. Get out before I kill you, she repeated. What? Sakura said, her brows drawing together in confusion. What was Ino saying? I am sick and tired of you doing everything for me. I am pregnant, not invalid. I can get my own drinks and I can carry my own shopping. What I can't do is watch you fuss over me. Ino stood and tugged until Sakura was standing also. She was pushed towards the door. I swear, don't you dare come near me unless you've learned that I can do things for myself. God, I'm surprised you haven't tried to come into the bathroom with me. And the door was slammed shut in Sakura's still shocked face. What? Sakura picked up the phone absently, still chewing on her pen as she reread the proposals on cutting down waiting time in the A&E. Sakura. The pain-filled voice made Sakura instantly snap up straight. She clutched the phone hard enough to crack the plastic. Ino. Are you okay? I fell. Sakura shrieked, her panic rushing through her and eating at her insides. Are you okay? What about the baby? Is there any blood? You're at home, right? I'll be over there in 2 seconds, don't move. I think I'm okay. I hurt my foot and I couldn't heal it because chakra would hurt the baby. Ino was babbling, which made Sakura nearly hyperventilate because Ino only babbled when she was scared. She threw a book hard against the door and the secretary peeked in to see what had caused the noise. She waved her over and thrust the phone at her. There's been an accident. Talk to her and keep her calm. She rushed out then because she definitely wasn't the person that could be calm in this situation. She bombed down the stairs, the elevator taking too long. When she reached the main exit, 2 medics with a stretcher were already waiting. Gossip traveled fast in the hospital, especially if it was about her. She was immensely thankful today for that fact. She didn't even slow and the men ran alongside her without needing to be told. She must have broken a land speed record getting to Ino's apartment. She burst through the door and was surprised that a scene from a battlefield didn't greet her. She had expected smashed china, glass and blood everywhere. She called out and a weak answer reached her from the kitchen area. She jumped over the counter and saw Ino propped up against the counter. The phone was still issuing soothing nonsense as it lay on the floor forgotten. Ino turned watery blue eyes to Sakura and she immediately knelt at her side. The paramedics hovered like hens in the background. She checked quickly to see if Ino had any broken bones. Thank God there was no blood. What happened? I was putting things away and I fell. Ino gestured to the knocked over chair that she had fallen from. It was stupid and normally she would have bounced back up, but her leg had connected painfully with the countertop and she hadn't been able to get her balance as she was unused to the new weight she had gained. She felt like an idiot. She should have listened to Sakura, not that she would ever tell her that. It was all she could do to drag herself to the phone. She was going to be sick. The worry that she might have hurt the twins had been worse than the fall. You did this out of spite. Sakura snapped her own worry, turning to its only comfortable outlet, rage. I told you about stretching and overdoing it. Ino let Sakura browbeat her because she felt like she deserved it. Sakura glared at her, but the building that had settled on her chest since she had heard Ino's voice on the telephone was demolished by her routine check. She swallowed hard. There could still be damage to the babies. We have to get you to the hospital to make sure, but there's no blood. That's a good sign. Ino grabbed onto those words, but they didn't stop the dread inside her swelling up to choke her. Sakura nearly fainted when the test results came back that everything was okay. Being the chief meant she could rush these things, and she had never been so glad to abuse her power before. Dr. Botan shared her relief and handed her a copy of the chart. She felt her legs give way and she found a seat. She felt insanely grateful that everything had been okay. It was hard now to believe that she originally thought of the twins as a science project. How idiotic and stupid she was. She pushed herself off the chair, her knees still a little weak. Ino would want to know immediately. She staggered into the blonde's room with a smile. Ino was washed out with worry. She had been staring out of the window, her hands gripping her slightly swollen belly in a protective shield. Sakura felt whatever anger at Ino's actions flow away at the nearly tortured body of Ino. Ino turned her head slowly, not wanting to know the results, too afraid that they might be bad. It's okay, Sakura said, coming and taking Ino's hand. Ino gripped it painfully. Nothing out of the ordinary. You probably cushioned them when you fell. Everything's fine, Ino, she said again to reassure the blonde who didn't quite believe her. No, it's not, Ino choked out. It might not have been fine. My pride. I just wanted to annoy you. We could have lost everything. But we didn't, Sakura said, sitting down at Ino's bedside. She placed her hand on the bump and realized that this was the first time she had actually touched it. She had wanted to, on numerous occasions, but it hadn't felt right. It was still Ino's body, and Sakura didn't think she was welcome. Now though, she ran her hand back forth on the bump. She could feel the heat of skin through the hospital robe. Ino had been checked out earlier. She had suffered major sprain to her ankle. She would have to keep off it for a few days and then not strain it after. An idea occurred to Sakura and she grew nervous. She fumbled with the wires on the monitor that Ino wasn't hooked up to. You won't be able to do much, she started badly, as Ino seemed to take that as a criticism and shrink into herself. She rushed on. I want you to stay with me. Ino looked at her like she was crazy. What? You'll have to get that girl who helps you, Sophie or something, to run the shop for a while you recover. There's too many stairs to your place. My apartment is on the ground. I can be there to change the bandages or if something else happens. I promise I won't suffocate you as long as you don't. She stopped herself from saying, do something stupid again, it would only be rubbing salt in the wound. I'm not sure, Ino hedged, looking pained at the notion of living with Sakura. She tried not to be offended, but once she realized Ino wouldn't agree easily, she put her foot down. I'm part of these babies' lives. You said so yourself. I'm their parent and it's my job to protect them, so you're coming home with me so I can watch over you and fuss. You might not like it, but I've listened to you. I've watched as you ignored my advice and glared at me. I won't let you do it this time. It's stupid to do it, and not only that, it's dangerous. Ino's hackles rose at the demands Sakura was making and they glared at each other. I'm not a baby, Sakura, I don't need a nanny. Well, obviously you do. Sakura had had enough. Ino was being stupid. She was putting their children at risk because of her pride, because she didn't want to spend any unnecessary time with her. She shoved that hurtful though out of her head. Look where we are. It's not my fault we're here. The unspoken "it's yours" made Ino flinch. She turned away from Sakura and hunched her shoulders. Sakura watched, feeling guilt but didn't take it back. After a while, when the air got so thick with frayed nerves, Ino nodded feebly. Okay. She agreed, still not looking at Sakura. Sakura swallowed and nodded. She left and felt like she hadn't won anything but a kick in the chest. It had been a week since Ino moved in after being released from hospital. 10 days since the fall. Tenten helped her move the stuff Ino had stiffly requested from her home. A week where Sakura felt like a dog and crept around the stifling silence of her apartment hoping not to disturb Ino who hadn't spoken to her at all. She was an enemy in her own home. Sakura waited until Ino went to bed, her bed of course, because the apartment only had one usable room and the pregnant lady got priority. The other room was filled with junk that Sakura was going to sort out so she could use it as a nursery for when the babies stayed with her. She settled down on the sofa which was starting to give her neck pains. She could take a weekend off. She was the boss and before this year had never taken a day off, not even her allotted holidays. She frowned as she realized how sad that was. Her life certainly had got more brighter and interesting since Ino had her crazy idea. Tenten could give her a hand throwing out the stuff in the spare room. She looked up as the door creaked open. Ino froze on her way to the kitchen. Their eyes met and Ino turned away first. Sakura flopped down then regretted it as her head hit the armrest hard. She had done the right thing, she told herself, but didn't really feel like it was the truth at the moment. She's still not talking to you, huh? Tenten said, tying a bandana around her head. Nope, Sakura said. She was in a pair of old jeans and a wrinkled band t-shirt she didn't remember owning. I'll take the back while you take the front, we'll meet in the middle, Tenten said, scoping out the amount of useless stuff in the room. She set her shoulders and climbed gamely to the back. I did the right thing, right? Sakura said, the doubts driving her crazy. She couldn't take much more of the silent treatment from Ino. Definitely. Although, Tenten was quick to reassure Sakura but trailed off. Although, Sakura prompted. You were a bit mean in how you did it. Tenten immediately put her hands up in a peaceful gesture. You had good intentions and of course Ino would need someone to keep an eye on her, but you were mean when you did it. Sakura frowned. She was being stubborn and stupid. All very true, Tenten said diplomatically, but the fact is you bullied a pregnant woman into living with you when you could have gone another way, that's all I'm saying. Sakura glowered and sorted through a pile of shoes. Why did she have a pair of golf shoes? She had never golfed in her life. She threw them in the Goodwill bag and then looked at Tenten's back. She might, probably, did, have a point. She had been rather curt with Ino when she told her to move in. Do you think she'll forgive me? Well, it is Ino, Tenten said, not sounding too hopeful at the prospect, but maybe the pregnancy thing will mellow her. They both looked at each other plainly, their doubt clearly conveyed. Sakura listened as Ino limped in late from the flower shop. It was 11:45 nearly. She didn't say anything as Ino switched on a low-lighted lamp and made her way into the kitchen. She heard her find the dinner she had left for her under the oven. She didn't move or open her eyes but felt she might actually get some sleep now that she knew Ino was safe. She woke a little later in surprise as Ino shook her softly. She opened her eyes and her mouth stumbled out her concern, "Are you okay? Are you going to slink about here forever?" Ino asked and her voice seemed harsh in the low light. Sakura just blinked at her with a fuzzy look that clearly conveyed she was still half in her dream about pickled eggs and pandas. Ino huffed in annoyance and grabbed Sakura's hand and pulled her until she followed, as docile as any lamb, into the bedroom. The bed was rumpled and the dinner plate sat at the edge of the nightstand. Her room was much bigger than Ino's. She had a nightstand at either end of her bed equipped with lamps. She had a walk-in closet and set of drawers on top of which a TV blared softly. The furniture was beech wood while the bed was a dark brown leather with cream sheets. It was very earthy, but Sakura had always found it empty like a hollow trunk. Ino seemed to fill it though as she added splashes of color with her makeup spread out crookedly on one nightstand and her cloths draped over the dresser, on the floor in the single chair. Sakura's glasses and book, which were placed in a straight line perpendicular with the wood, had been knocked until they were askew. The remote was flung beside them and the covers left rumpled in a way that would cause wrinkles. Ino had totally invaded her space and made it better. Sakura took all this in an absent dreamy fashion as Ino pushed her down in the bed, then crawled over her and tucked herself in. Sakura was quite content to sleep as she was with the covers somewhere down at her knees, but Ino, seeing this, let out another huff and pulled them up around her. Sakura smiled benignly at her but immediately went to sleep. Sakura grinned as she walked in and sat her folder quietly on the arm of the chair. The radio covered the sounds of her shoes as she crept closer to the kitchen. Ino was waving back and forth singing to some upbeat song that seemed to have "do-ah" as every third word. Or at least Ino's version did, the radio sung it a little differently. She sat on a backless stool and placed her face in her hands and made herself comfortable. She was treated to Ino's voice cracking as she tried to hit a particular high note as she dramatically threw chopped carrots into a boiling pot. She thought she had been caught when Ino turned her head to the side to lift the lid and peer into another pot, but the blonde didn't see her. The song was winding down when Ino, overcome by the chirpy tune, spun and using the wooden spoon as a microphone crooned into its end. Her mouth froze wide open as her eyes became huge as she finally noticed Sakura sitting watching her with rapt attention. Sakura waved cheerily at Ino's horrified face. Ino immediately snapped to attention and her blush was darker than Sakura's hair. She tried to work for an excuse but found nothing in the face of Sakura's beaming countenance. "How long have you been here?" she asked causally, already half knowing the answer. "Long," Sakura said, fully enjoying Ino's embarrassment. "If you promise not to tease me in public, I'll let you have some dinner," Ino bargained. Sakura tilted her head to the side as she considered the offer. "Deal." Ino breathed a sigh of relief. Sakura stood stiffly facing the green wall of the nursery. The room was cleared of all furniture and dust covers littered the floor in case Sakura knocked over the paint. Her throat jerked and worked soundlessly and her hands twitched, going for weapons on a ninja pouch she no longer wore. Outside, the day was retreating and shining red highlights into the room that cut into the white walls and silhouetted her in scarlet. Ino found her there, her eyes far away and her muscles tightened to the point of explosion. Even Sakura's old clothes, which were cut and splattered with paint, seemed to take on a hard armor-like quality. Ino made a noise and, as expected, the paintbrush was hurled at her with an expertise that hadn't dulled over the years. She caught it just as easily. Some skills were taught in horrendous ways that never left you. Sakura at once came back from whatever battlefield she had revisited. Her eyes took in what she had done in horror. "Ino, I'm sorry. Where were you?" Ino said with understanding, coming into the room. "He should be here," Sakura said, instead looking away into the corner without seeing it. "He should be here to paint lions and clouds on my kid's wall." "Naruto," Ino guessed. "Sigh." Sakura said the word sharply, like it cut her mouth to speak it. Ino placed her hand on Sakura's arm, then gave up formalities and pulled her into a hug. It was a long time before Sakura lifted her arms to hug her back. Ino held on tighter when the small frame began to shudder. "What is it?" "It's a sheep." "A sheep? How?" "There's its body and those are its legs. That looks like an evil mouth with fangs." "It does not." "Sakura, get that off the wall before you gave my children nightmares." "Before you give me nightmares." "Fine," Sakura said petulantly, smoothing her roller over her artwork. Ino nodded satisfied and went back to setting up the cot. They still had 5 months or so to do this, but she wanted to stay near Sakura while she was painting, and this provided a good excuse. "I'm stuck." Sakura stopped rolling and looked over her shoulder at the sitting blonde. She put the roller in its bucket and took the instructions off the blonde. She studied it then at where Ino had stalled. "Oh, you forgot to put the male adapter into the female one." "No, I didn't. That's how I got into this mess," Ino snorted. Sakura blushed and rolled her eyes. "You set me up for that, didn't you?" "Yep. Been waiting to do that since I saw the instruction labels," Ino confessed cheerfully. "I'm hungry." She looked at Sakura expectantly. Sakura raised her eyebrow. "Let me jump right to it." Her sarcasm was thick. Ino grinned. "Thanks. I want a ham and pickled cheese baguette with brown sauce." Sakura screwed her face up but ignored the strange request. That wasn't a pregnancy craving but one of Ino's favorite snacks. "Be back in a flash," she said, wiping her hands on a rag to get rid of the paint. When she came back with the sandwiches and drinks, she called Ino to the table. "I saw a poster for that book you like. What was it?" "Oh yay. The Blossom Bloom's Death. They made it into a play. When it comes we should go." Ino's face lit up. That's a great story. We really should. When's it in town? Next month, just after your scan. I have a friend in the ticket office I can get us the first showing, Sakura said, grinning at how happy she had made Ino. Excellent. It's a date, Ino said, grinning. Sakura grabbed her sandwich and turned away. She told herself that it was a figure of speech, but her heart grew warm anyway at the thought. So, show me how to do that jutsu, Ino said, bending down and grinning at Sakura. The pink-haired girl had just woken up and her hair was reaching out in all directions. She blearily looked at Ino's charming face and grumbled. She staggered to the bathroom to wash her face and brush her teeth. Aren't you going to take breakfast? Ino asked, watching her from the door. No, I'll grab something later, Sakura said, slumped over the sink. Show me the jutsu, Ino asked again. Sakura shook her head as her mouth was filled with toothpaste. Why not? Ino demanded. Sakura spat and then rinsed her mouth out. Because it's early. Because I have to go to work. Because you have to go to work. Because it's mine and I don't want to. Damn Sakura, it's not like I want to use it on you, Ino said, rolling her eyes. I didn't think that, Sakura said quickly and pulled her jumper over her head to hide her blush. Come on, Sakura. I promise I won't let it get ripped off. Ino joined her hands together and wiggled in an attempt to persuade Sakura into giving in. I can't right now. I really do need to get to the office, but here, she dug around in her drawer and took out her notes. Learn from this. Thank you. Ino snapped the book off her and turned away. Sakura rolled her eyes and felt highly unappreciated. Sakura didn't feel like making her own lunch that morning, which was why she was standing in line at Old Man's Sandwich Bar. The old man had been old when she was young and now he was ancient. He hated children and refused to serve anyone under the age of 20, even though his sandwiches were perfectly legal. He just didn't like the youthful energy and noise that they brought into his establishment. Despite this, he had the best sandwiches in all on Kanahara, and they were cheap too. That had been really important to Sakura when she had been an intern. Old Man was also one of the very few people in the village that wasn't in awe of her. That meant that she couldn't depend on her reputation as a legend to skip the rather long queue. She shifted her weight back and forth, bored out of her mind. Old Man didn't even put up pictures or colorful images for customers to stare at. He was probably afraid that it would encourage them to stay. Tanny, you're expecting again. The incredulous voice behind her drew Sakura's attention, but rather than be caught eavesdropping, she used her ninja skills to listen in on the conversation. She was so bored. Yeah, I know I said after the third child I would quit, but Mickey wanted to try for a girl again, Tanny said. I don't envy you the morning sickness. The other mother laughed, a little meanly in Sakura's opinion. The all-day sickness, you mean? And both women convulsed in laughter. But no, it's the ballooning out I hate. They have no decent maternity clothes in the village. They all look horrible. I demanded Mickey go to the city and buy me half-decent clothes this time. Well, he can afford it. Didn't he just become principal? The women continued to gossip, but Sakura ignored them. Ino didn't seem to be affected by any of those issues. Sakura didn't hear or see her throwing up, and she wasn't gaining an awful lot of weight. Her frown made her forehead wrinkles deeper than normal. She was starting to resemble the old man now. Ino, Sakura said later that night as they sat down to dinner, I think we should book an AP ointment with a specialist. Why? Ino asked, curious. You don't seem to be experiencing the normal pregnancy issues, Sakura said, not eating. Oh, don't worry about that. Ino waved her fork airily. My mum was always going on about how childbirth is so easy for the Yamanka women. I'm expecting to breeze through this. But there was something in her tone that didn't convince Sakura. Still, she said, a woman of your age. What? Ino cut in, her eyes narrowing dangerously. Sakura's eyes widened. I mean you're slightly more mature, that is to say, nothing. She dropped the subject. Cowardice was the better part of valor. We're babysitting, Ino said, and Sakura looked up from her cereal. It was Saturday, her day off. She raised her eyebrow at the blonde. Oh, are we? Yeah, Shika should be coming by soon. We're giving Tamari and Shikamaru the day off, Ino grinned a secretive grin that made Sakura nervous. Why did you volunteer us for this? Sakura asked, slightly annoyed. Think, Sakura. We put in the goodwill now, and then when we need a babysitter for the twins they can't say no. Ino grinned mischievously, but Sakura still wasn't convinced. It didn't matter as the doorbell rang. Sakura was the closest to the door and answered it. A small chubby bundle was thrust past her legs and made like a juggernaut to the TV, while a backpack and teddy bear were thrust into her face. Here you got, that's everything you'll need. We really appreciate this. Thanks. Bye. And Tamari was nothing but a blonde streak rushing down the road. Sakura stumbled back into the room and kicked the door shut. She dropped the backpack and saw Shika sitting with rapt fascination at colorful images on the TV. Ino came into the living room eating a banana that was smothered in chocolate sauce. She grinned, taking in Shika, and turned to Sakura with a smug smile. See? This won't be so hard. Sakura didn't agree. Oh dear God, make him stop. Ino cried, giving up the chase and flopping down on the sofa gracelessly. Sakura felt torn. On the one hand, she felt vindicated and had to resist the urge to say, I told you so. On the other hand, she was busy trying to drag Shika back inside the window. No, I swear. I can walk on air. My dad showed me the jutsu, it's the coolest thing ever. Shika cried, trying his best to wriggle out of Sakura's grip. I don't care. If you fall, your mum will kill me. Sakura yelled, firmly snagging a foot and giving an almighty heave. Shika was pulled back forcefully into the room to dangle upside down by his ankle. It had been a peaceful morning. They didn't hear a sound out of Shika. Then the cartoon stopped and all hell broke loose. The quiet little boy exploded into a wiry bundle of energy that poked inquisitively around his surroundings. It was after Ino pulled him away from the exploding kettle that she had given up the race, leaving Sakura to quell the air master phase of Shika. Sakura glared down at the little boy, who grinned unabashedly back. She let him down gently and looked at Ino's slumped form in concern. Ino was sweating and slumped down on the sofa. She really looked exhausted. Sakura scooped up the little terror before he could scramble off. That's it, we're going to the park. The park? Shika cried with a smile, wrapping his arms around Sakura's neck. All right. Ino groaned and went to heave herself up. Sakura pressed her gently down on the sofa with a soft smile. She picked up Shika's backpack and said, Don't worry about it, you stay here and get some rest. If you're sure, Ino said, but was already putting her feet up and reaching for the remote. Sakura had the distinct impression she was being conned. Shika tugged on her hand repeatedly until she started to move towards the door. She tried to protest but didn't have a case when Shika turned his big brown eyes on her. She melted instantly and gave up the fight. Wait. Sakura turned back to Ino and leant down when she beckoned. Ino leant forward and kissed her cheek. Thanks, Sakura. Sakura instantly felt better about being manipulated. So, Shika said, his head swiveling like a magpie to spy all the shiny objects on their way to the park, is Auntie Ino your girlfriend? What? Sakura nearly stumbled in shock. Shika turned to look at Sakura seriously, and she was slightly unnerved by that gaze in such a young child. Auntie Ino, is she your girlfriend? No, Sakura said, blushing and looking away. But you want her to be right. Shika said, then hopped up on a bench so he was nearly at eye level with Sakura. Well, Sakura hesitated, stopping to face the little boy. It's complicated. How? Shika asked inquisitively. Sakura frowned. It just is.